4 minutes before my husband's future stopped belonging to him, Spencer straightened the collar of the navy dress he had chosen and whispered, "Smile. Keep the pool stories to yourself. And don't make me explain you tonight." I followed him into the reception at the Portland Arts Center, where every donor conversation carried weight. I told myself one quiet evening would cost less than another argument on the drive home. Spencer left me immediately, crossing toward Mallory Sutton and a circle of guests he wanted to impress. He introduced Mallory by listing her recent successes, then gestured toward me with, "My wife, Erin," before turning away before I could answer. A server dropped a tray nearby, and when her breathing turned shallow, I steadied her shoulder and murmured, "Look at me. One breath at a time." Across the room, Caleb Dorsey stopped speaking and stared at me. I had never met the executive director Spencer treated like the judge of his career. Yet Caleb walked past every waiting hand and came straight toward mine. His eyes moved from my face to the crescent scar in my palm. Then he asked whether I had worked at a public pool near the river 20 years earlier. When I nodded, he reached into his jacket and placed an old red lifeguard whistle in my hand, its ring dark with age. "I've been searching for the girl who wore this for 20 years. The initials E. C. were still scratched into the side where I had carved them with a needle at 15. And the room seemed to pull away. Rain, black water, and a man struggling beneath a broken railing returned in pieces I had not touched in years. Spencer stepped beside us wearing the polished smile he used when he did not understand a situation but needed to control it. Caleb never looked at him as he took both my hands and said, "Your wife is the reason I lived long enough to build this place." Caleb did not pull me toward the stage or ask the room to celebrate something I barely remembered. He asked whether I was comfortable letting nearby guests hear what had happened. When I nodded, he held up the red whistle and explained that his car had broken through a guardrail during a storm 20 years earlier, dropping into a channel beside the grounds. I had been 15, closing the pool after a summer shift, when I heard metal tear and saw headlights vanish below the road. I remembered the cold before I remembered his face. I tied a rescue float around my waist, climbed down the bank, and kept his head above water while the current pulled. Caleb repeated the words I used whenever his eyes started closing. "Look at the red light. Stay with me until help gets here." By the time firefighters reached us, my hands were cut, the whistle was gone, and I left before he woke. He returned, but the staff knew me as Callie. My family moved soon afterward, and records involving a minor gave him nowhere else to look. Spencer stepped closer with the smile he used whenever he needed to sound informed before understanding the facts. "Aaron told me about this years ago," he offered, trying to place himself inside the story. Caleb asked how old I had been, where the pool stood, and why I left before morning, and Spencer answered every question wrong. Mallory touched his wrist and murmured that guests were waiting. She knew when he needed rescuing, and the ease between them landed harder than the gesture. Caleb asked for a few private minutes, making it clear the choice belonged to me. Spencer answered, "Of course. We'd be glad to." But I looked at Caleb and said, "I would rather decide that for myself." The people nearest us heard it, and Spencer's expression tightened because I had refused to let him speak through me. Nothing had happened to his job, but the people whose approval he chased could see how little room he allowed me in my own life. Spencer waited until the parking garage swallowed the noise behind us before asking what Caleb had said about him. He did not ask whether I remembered the water or what holding that red whistle had done to me. He wanted to know how many donors had heard and whether I understood how bad it looked that he could not answer 3 questions about his wife. "You made me look like a stranger," he said, gripping the wheel, and I answered, "You did that yourself." The phone on the dashboard lit before he could turn it over. Mallory's message stayed visible long enough for both of us to read. "Did you get things under control at home? Delete the weekend schedule before this gets worse." Spencer flipped it face down and called it work. though I had not touched the phone, raised my voice, or mentioned an affair. "Why does your coworker care whether you control what happens in our house?" I asked. And he snapped that Caleb had made me feel important. At home, I opened our shared calendar while Spencer stood behind me, insisting there was nothing to find. The Seattle trip he claimed centered on a donor meeting showed that meeting canceled 2 days before he left. Mallory's public photo placed her there that same weekend, smiling beside a hotel window while Spencer had told me he was working through dinner. It did not prove everything, but it proved his explanation was false. I asked why he traveled after the meeting disappeared, and Spencer warned that rumors about Mallory could damage his career. "Why are you talking about rumors when I haven't accused you of anything?" I asked. And he stayed silent until the refrigerator motor clicked off behind us. Then he said I was not acting like myself, as though the version of me that never checked his answers was the only one he recognized. I took a blanket to the couch, knowing I was not ready to name what he had done, but finished letting him name reality for me ever again inside our marriage. I learned later that Noah Blevins asked for a private meeting with Human Resources the next morning. He did not mention my marriage, Caleb's reaction, or anything that happened between Spencer and me after the reception. He brought dated drafts, department feedback, and the email chain showing he had built the audience plan Spencer later presented under his own name. He also brought the message Spencer sent after Noah asked for proper credit, reminding him that his contract review was still pending. Noah had kept those records for months because Spencer knew how to make every objection sound personal. What changed was not the evidence, but Noah's belief that Spencer's confidence could no longer substitute for truth after everyone watched him answer basic questions about his wife incorrectly. That moment did not prove workplace misconduct, and Noah never claimed it did. It only convinced him to stop arguing with Spencer and let the documents speak where his own voice had failed. For the first time, the man who had controlled every version of the story would have to answer evidence he could not directly interrupt. When Human Resources raised the issue with leadership, Caleb removed himself from every decision involving Spencer. He explained that his newly discovered connection to me created a conflict, so an independent board member and the HR director took control of the review. They examined authorship records, Spencer's pressure on Noah, and the travel approvals connected to Mallory. An affair alone was not grounds for dismissal, but undisclosed conflicts, inaccurate reporting, and questionable use of organizational funds were matters the center could investigate. Spencer called me as soon as he was ordered not to contact Noah privately. "Tell Caleb people are misunderstanding me," he pressed, though Caleb had made no accusation and was no longer part of the process. I asked what Caleb had actually done, and Spencer finally admitted, "Nothing." He stepped away. That answer left him without the powerful enemy he wanted, and whatever frightened him now had to be sitting inside the records other people were already reading. Spencer told me Mallory was only a coworker dragged into our marriage because I had become suspicious after the reception. That same day, he told her I had become unpredictable since Caleb recognized me and might damage both their careers unless she repeated the story about Seattle. I did not know he was giving us different versions yet, but the pattern was clear in messages Mallory later preserved. With me, he denied the affair. With her, he claimed our marriage had ended long ago and existed only on paper. Human Resources asked Mallory to explain why she had joined trips that produced no confirmed meetings, donor notes, or follow-up records. She first insisted Spencer had approved the schedules and assured her every trip served a legitimate purpose. When they showed her dates he had described as business travel, though no partner could confirm seeing them, she understood why he had kept her name on every itinerary. If the review became an administrative failure, he could call her careless while presenting himself as the manager who trusted bad information. Mallory contacted me after that meeting, not to apologize, but to tell me she would not keep lying for him. "He said you were already separated emotionally," she explained, "and that he would file after his performance review. I asked whether he had ever chosen a date, contacted a lawyer, or taken one concrete step. Her silence lasted before she admitted, "No. Every time we got close, there was another reason to wait." She sent the messages to her attorney and human resources, avoiding private images and anything meant to humiliate us. I kept only what my lawyer needed to understand the marriage and protect me during negotiations. And I never sent it to Spencer's coworkers. Mallory knew he still brought me to events and used our marriage to support his image. So telling the truth did not erase her part. But she finally understood she was not the future Spencer had chosen. She was another person he expected to carry the risk while he kept every part of his life where it was. The preliminary review confirmed that Noah had created most of the audience plan Spencer presented as his own work. It also found that several trips involving Mallory had no documented business purpose. While Spencer had never disclosed the relationship affecting his approval decisions, the center removed his authority to supervise employees, review contracts, and authorize travel, though he remained on salary while the process continued. He had not lost everything, but he had lost the part of his job that let him control who could speak and what version of events reached leadership. That evening, Spencer brought home dinner and arranged the containers between us, like the table could still be set back to normal. A board member had agreed to meet with him informally, and Spencer wanted me beside him so our marriage would look stable. If they see us together, this can stay an administrative misunderstanding instead of becoming something bigger, he explained, already choosing the clothes I should wear. I asked whether he planned to apologize to Noah for taking credit, to Mallory for leaving her exposed, or to me for sleeping with her while using our marriage to protect his reputation. "This is not the time to divide blame," he answered, and the words settled the question more clearly than an apology ever could. Even with his authority suspended and every story under review, he still saw the people around him as pieces to rearrange until he looked respectable again. I told him I had met with a family law attorney and signed a short-term lease across town. Oregon did not require me to prove misconduct to end the marriage, so I would not turn our private life into a public trial just to leave. My attorney would address marital property, shared obligations, income, and any personal expenses Spencer had hidden inside work travel. I was not freezing accounts, taking his paycheck, or trying to leave him unable to live. Spencer leaned back and warned, "You'll come home when you realize this life exists because I built it." I placed the lease, my work schedule, and my evening enrollment confirmation on the table, each page showing that my decision had already moved beyond anger. I packed 2 suitcases and took the red whistle Caleb had returned to me. I did not leave for another man, a larger house, or a life already prepared for my arrival. I left because Spencer was still asking me to protect the image of a marriage he had already abandoned in private. By the time the door closed behind me, he was no longer deciding which version of me would be allowed into the room. The final review found that Spencer had taken more credit than the records supported, pressured Noah after he asked for proper acknowledgement, and approved questionable travel for someone he was privately involved with. The center offered him 2 choices: remain in a non-management role under a performance plan, or leave under standard separation terms. Spencer chose to resign because working beside people who once reported to him felt worse than walking away. He kept the right to work in the field, but he could no longer use Caleb as a reference or avoid explaining why he left during an internal review. Mallory received a formal warning for failing to disclose a relationship with the person approving her travel. Cooperation allowed her to keep her position, but she was transferred, lost the promotion under consideration, and left the center months later for another job. Telling the truth did not erase the months she accepted Spencer's version of our marriage while watching him bring me to public events. She did not get the future he promised, but she also stopped carrying the professional risk he had quietly placed on her. Noah was formally recognized as the principal author of the audience plan and moved under a different supervisor. Caleb required the center to create a reporting channel outside, direct management, and tighten how authorship was documented. but he gave Noah no personal favor. He also avoided private contact with me until Spencer's review was finished, leaving no room for anyone to claim the outcome came from gratitude. Spencer lost authority because Noah kept drafts. Mallory kept schedules, and his own name appeared beneath every approval. Our house was sold during the divorce because neither of us wanted or could reasonably keep it alone. We divided marital property through negotiation, without hidden accounts, sudden wealth, or a courtroom victory designed to humiliate him. At the final signing, Spencer looked across the table and said, "Caleb destroyed my life." I reminded him that Caleb had stepped away. Noah brought the documents. Mallory confirmed the travel. Human Resources checked the records. And Spencer had signed every decision himself. After the divorce was final, I returned to community college and finished the credits I had postponed for years. Caleb did not offer me a title, money, or a place inside his organization. He wrote one letter confirming the history behind my interrupted education, then left every decision after that to me. My apartment was small. My furniture was secondhand, and my evenings were crowded with work and classes. But the exhaustion belonged to choices I had made for myself. Caleb and I waited until Spencer's review had ended before speaking regularly again. We met for coffee, traded books, and talked about the 20 years we had lived without knowing what became of the other. He admitted he had turned the girl with the red whistle into someone almost impossible in his memory. I told him that girl had been frightened too. She simply had no time to stand still. Months later, Caleb asked me to dinner and made the reason plain before I could question it. "Not because you saved me, and not because I spent 20 years looking. I want to know the woman you are now." I smiled and told him, "Then stop searching. I'm already here." He answered that he was not asking to rescue me or repay a debt, only whether he could walk beside me. My final presentation was held in a small classroom where nobody knew the whole story. Noah sent a message saying the audience plan had launched under his name, while Caleb waited outside with the red whistle preserved in a simple glass case. I no longer saw it as proof that a powerful man had searched for me. It was proof that I had existed fully long before Spencer decided which parts of me were worth noticing at last. Tonight, tell me where you are listening from and which part of Aaron's journey stayed with you. Some lives do not change through one perfect moment. They change through small choices made after the room grows quiet. Stay with us for more stories about people finding their way back to themselves.